ทุกๆคนครับที่หนึ่งผมขอโทษครับเพราะว่าเราอยู่เมืองไทยผมเน้นพูดภาษาไทยแต่ว่า50 ปีแล้วผมไม่เคยอยู่เมืองไทยแล้วก็เดี๋ยวนี้เริ่มไป90% ครับเวลานานแล้วเวลาปี66ผมเคยอยู่บ้านเจียงที่พูดได้นิดหน่อยแล้วเดี๋ยวนี้ที่พูดไม่ชัดเลยครับแล้วก็ขอโทษผมจะพูดภาษาอังกฤษบางทีผมจะพูดภาษาไทยนิดหน่อยGood afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I am very, very happy and honored to be here at this session organized by the Museum and the Fine Arts Department. I had no idea, obviously, 50 years ago, that something I did would grow into such a very large, meaningful part of Thai culture and Thai history and international culture. What I would like to do is just show you some pictures and talk about Ban Chiang in 1966 when I was there, and then I would like to reflect on the contributions of the Ban Chiang discovery and the study of Ban Chiang to contemporary politics in Southeast Asia. I would like to make a suggestion about that, about the importance of culture and the study of history. But first I would like to say that my name has come up today many times and in the past, but the lesson I have learned from Ban Chiang was given to us, I think, by Ajahn Pisit this morning, which is the cooperation of many, many people. Something like this does not happen because of one person or two people or three people. It happens because of many people. And so I want today to thank all the scholars and others who have made the research and the excavations at Ban Chiang possible. From Ajahn Pisit to Ajahn Joyce to Ajahn Chet Gorman, to Froelich Rainey, who came up with the money, to Lisa Lyons, to Mompantip Jumpot, to Kun Chin Yu Di, and lots of other people. But in particular, I want to thank the people of Ban Chiang, because when I stayed there, they were very, very friendly to me. It was a wonderful experience with really very, very nice people. Even though I was a Farang and, not too many Farang had ever gone to Ban Chiang. They were extremely welcoming and helpful and friendly, and I've always remained very grateful to them. So I first came to Thailand in 1961. When my father Ben Tan Ek Akaraja Tud Saharat Yu Ti Krung Thep. So my father was the American ambassador in Bangkok, and this is the house my brother and I lived at. This is the guest house in the ambassador's compound, Ban Tud, on Wittiyu Road. So this is a short picture. I think it's my mother and some friends at the Grand Palace. My father and my mother were committed to understanding and learning about Thai culture and Thai history. And so my father hired a teacher, Kun Nut, who came by our house 3 times a week to teach the kids. Myself, a younger brother, and a younger sister. The 4th younger sister was too small. So we all studied Thai, along with my mom and dad. My dad and mom spent a lot of time learning about Thailand. I think my father, as the ambassador, went to every Changwat at one time or another. My mother would take us to lectures at the Siam Society. We went to the National Museum. Her friends were the artists, the art historians, and this all contributed to my thinking in Ban Chiang, which I will tell you about. So I thought this picture is nice. This is the traffic in Bangkok in 1962. So this is a picture, with Dad, I said traveled a lot. So that's my father and my younger sister, Kit, and my mother, and I think we're at Tat Panom. And the man on the left with my father is the abbot, Jawat, at Tat Panom. So this is, I think, the same trip, looking at my mother's dress, where we flew by helicopter, and we landed in some village in the Isan, so my dad could go out and just talk to the people. So this is a picture of Udorn in 1966. Now, the first question, I have two things I want to talk about, two ideas. One idea is coincidence, fate. The other idea is mindfulness. The idea of coincidence came to me because someone a long time ago, I can't remember who, someone in Ban Chiang or someone in Thailand said, Kun Satif, you did not find Ban Chiang. It was the Tewada. There was a Tewada who pushed you down at the right place. So you didn't do anything, right? You just, the Tewada did everything. I said, okay, that's fine. But then there is the part of our lives which we control. So my idea is there's a part of our lives we do not control. There's another part we do control. And that second part I would discuss as mindfulness. So how did I get to Ban Chiang? By accident. I came to Thailand in the summer of '66 to do research in politics for Harvard College. I wanted to interview people in villages, particularly in the Isan, about politics. I had no idea about archaeology or old history. In fact, nobody did. In those days, nobody knew, except one person I'll tell you about, that there was a Bronze Age culture in the Isan. Nobody knew. And so I needed a village where I could go stay and interview people. So I had a part-time internship with the research office of USAM, the American Aid Mission. And one of the men there, I think Fred Vondermaiden, some of you may remember Fred, he wrote on Thai politics. He said, oh, go see Father Jacques Amiot at Chulalongkorn. Father Jacques Amiot was an anthropologist studying and teaching at Chula. So I went to see Father Amiot, and I remember I had to walk up 5 flights of stairs in the old buildings at Chula, no air conditioning. And I went to see him, and I said, Father Amiot, I would like to find a village where I could go interview people. And he said, oh, you have to go to Ban Chiang. And I said, why? There what? How many mubang are there in the Isan? There 1,000, 2,000, I remember. Why Ban Chiang? He said, oh, because I've just come back from Ban Chiang because I was doing interviews at Nong Han. And the Kruyai, the principal, Kun Promi, his daughter has just gotten married, and he has built them a new house. And in the new house, they have a spare bedroom. And it's a new house, it's very nice, and there are mosquito nets. So I'm sure John Promi would let you stay there. So I ended, the second reason was I then learned that the governor of Udorn, the Pua Ratchagan, was Kun Win Yu. Some of the governor remembered him. He was a very important man in the Interior Ministry. And he and my father had worked together on the Kamnan program. My father's role was to provide American support in many ways for the development and the security of Thailand during the era of the Cold War, as the Chinese communists and the Vietnamese communists were moving south into South Vietnam, into Laos, and later in Cambodia, and then of course they wanted Thailand. My father had been a student of insurgency and the communists. He had been a student in China in 1937. On his way back to America, he came through Vietnam, Cambodia, and Thailand and Burma. And so his concern was that the most important part of a country are the people, particularly the people in the villages. If the villages are strong, if the villages are developed, the country automatically becomes strong and wealthy. And so this was the idea he was talking to Marshal Sarit about and His Majesty. My dad was very close friends with His Majesty. You all know about his projects, his concern for the local people. Dad was a friend of Sarit too. He was a tough guy, but Sarit was from the Isan, and Sarit understood villages. So my father had this program with Kun Win Yu to bring all the Kamnan, especially from the Northeast. In those days, the Kamnan were very low. The Puyai in Bangkok did not think much about the Kamnan. So my dad had this program where the Kamnan would come to Bangkok and they would get educated and they'd meet all the senior people, and he would give a party at the American ambassador's residence for the Kamnan. So every couple of weeks we would have 100, 200 Kamnan come to the residence for a party. And Kun Win Yu was there. So Kun Win Yu was the governor in New Dorn. So I went to see him to ask permission to go to Ban Chiang. He said, fine. So then I took a bus from Udorn to Ampur Nong Han. And then I took a bus from Ampur Nong Han to Ban Chiang. And that was the road coming into Ban Chiang in 1966. And that was one of the streets in 1966. Now, I have to apologize because I do not have many pictures of Ban Chiang. Because in those days, if you took pictures, you had to have a camera. And the cameras were pretty big. And mostly you wore them around your neck and they kind of sat like this. And I felt that if you walk around somebody else's country or village with your camera like this, everybody knows you're some kind of farang who's there taking pictures of them, right? And you're not really, part of the community, you're a stranger. So I said, okay, so I never went around with my camera. So after everything happened, I don't have any pictures because I wanted to just have good relationships with all the people. So this is another street, and you can see the ox cart. I don't think there are many ox carts left in the Isan these days. That's the monk's residence in the Wat where the dig is, the excavation is. So that's the new house. If I can do this. This is Kun Rabiap. She's the daughter of Achan Promi. This is her husband, Kun Siripong. That's me. Lao Ma, Chamai. And so this is again same time. So that's Kun Rabiap. This is her younger sister, whose nickname was Tomboy. Back then, their nickname was Tomboy. So I didn't ask why. This was the bathroom, and Abnama. When I was first started taking showers, I would use too much water. So after a couple of days, Kun Rabiab came up and very quietly, very politely said, Kun Sativ Kap, when you take a shower, do you have to use so much water? And I said, why? She said, well, because that's all the water we have. We don't get more until the rainy season. So I said, oh, now what do I do? So she showed me how to take a shower, and it's the way people on boats do it, right? You take a small jar, and you take a pakama or something, right? And you put it slowly into the jar, and it absorbs all the water. And you take the pakama, and you wash yourself off, and you take a shower, and you use, very little bit. So this is Kunpa, Kunmea, Kunsiripong. And Kunpa has the traditional tattoos, which give him good magic. So no one can shoot him with a bullet or stab him with a knife. And his family was one of the founding families of Ban Chiang. Ban Chiang was founded by 4 families who came from Muang Puan in Laos at the time of Zhao Anu, about 1820. And so they speak Puan. And when they didn't want me to understand, they would talk in Puan to each other. So what I did was, this is Kun Siripong, and he was he was the art teacher at the school. So we would go from house to house, and I would ask questions. I had a questionnaire, and I had something about politics, and I've given all my research notes to the museum in Banchiang, and I would go from house to house talking to people. So this is a damna, right? And this is me planting rice. I can tell you, if you plant rice for 2 hours, it's very tiring. It's very hot, and your hand gets tired, planting the rice. So this is, to me, this is just a village in the rice fields, and this is the way Banchiang was, probably going back hundreds of years. And the other thing which is important is the boy on the water buffalo. The image of Asia for Westerners for a long, long time was the boy on the water buffalo, because the boy had the job, the boys. They'd have to take the water buffalo out in the morning, stay with them, and then bring them back at night, because there were no schools. I doubt there are many water buffalo left in Thailand, right? Tractors. And a lot of young people, they don't like to they don't like to work in the rice paddies anymore. And in Banchiang today, there's a high school. So boys have to go to school, girls have to go to school. So that's a close-up. And fishing. Rice. Okay, that's the tree. That's where I stumbled. Oh, John, that's the tree. So you can get somebody to look at it and think. This picture, however, was taken in 1976 when I came back, my first return trip to Banchiang. And the path is wider. So the story then was, well, let's see. If I can do, this is Kun Rabiep, this is Kun Siripong, this is Tomboy, this is Pa Op, who is the sister-in-law. And these are the two, these are Tomboy's, no, these are her two daughters, I think. And I can't remember his name. Anyway, the story was, I'd been working on a project about Thai politics, and we'd written something, and I'd given it to Prime Minister Krieng Sak, and he was very grateful, and he said, Steve, can I help you out? And I said, well, I kind of like to go back to Banchiang, but I don't have a lot of time. He said, I'll give you a car. So he gave me a car and a driver, and I can't remember who he was. Anyway, so we drove up to Banchiang for one day, and then we drove back. And I did take this picture of the tree, because in 1966, I didn't take any pictures of the tree. Now, to give you a better sense, this is looking uphill going down. And by 76, the pathway was quite wide. In 66, the pathway went from the tree to about here. And I don't know why it got widened out. And the roots, these roots here, went over like this, right, across the path. So I was walking down right here, and Siripong, who's here, was walking to my left right here. And so I was talking to Siripong and looking at him, and tripped on a tree root, right, and fell on my face on the ground, literally. And I caught myself with my hands like this. And right underneath my face, in the dirt, was a round circle. I saw a round circle, and then a second one, a third one, a fourth one, a fifth one, a sixth one. And it was obvious that these were the top of clay pots. Just all right there. Now, why were they at the surface? I don't know, but my assumption is Banchiang, I think, John, you will confirm, at this part of the village is about 2 meters higher than the rice fields. This path here was a shortcut. The village, somebody laid out the village streets in an unusual pattern. It was a grid pattern, like a modern city. But somebody had cut a shortcut between 2 of the streets. And for some reason that time, Siripong and I were walking, and I just turned to the right to go down the path. The path had been eroded by monsoon rains. About a meter and a half of topsoil had been washed off. You can't see it too well, but the rest of the soil is here. This is lower, so this was a slope here. So about a meter is washed off, exposing the highest level of the burial grounds. So I looked at these round pots, and I said to Sirapong, I said, Sirapong, what is this? Nirai. And he said, old pots. And my first thought was, yeah, of course they're old pots. Then the question is, how old? That was my thought, how old? So then I saw, about over there, were two boys, maybe 6, 7 years old. And what they were obviously doing was, well, we played the same game when I was a kid, only we used marbles, little round marbles, or we used pennies, right? So these two boys were breaking pieces off of the pots and throwing them. So a boy would break off a piece and he'd throw it. The other boy would break off a piece and he threw it. And if his piece landed on the first piece, he got 2 pieces, right? And I never asked what happens, whoever got the most piece. Did you get money or did you get an ice cream or whatever? But that gave me the idea. Break off pieces. So I broke off 3 pieces from 3 different pots, which were sort of next to each other. And the pieces, the shards, were about this big. And this is where the mindfulness comes in. Up to now, the story, I think, is about a tewada. Because somebody could have gotten me to Benchiang. Somebody could have told me to turn right rather than go straight. Somebody could have made me look at Sirapong and trip on a tree root and fall on my face. I cannot speak to that. But mindfulness started to come in when I was looking at the sherds. And there's several things. And first, as I've said before, most of the credit goes to my mother, because she's the one who'd given me and my siblings the education in Thai history and Thai culture. I mean, I knew Sukhothai, Sisachanalai, Ayutthaya, Lopburi, Mon, Devaravati, Khmer, all these things. And it was all in my head. And then secondly, but importantly, in Bangkok, before I went to Benchiang, I had seen a notice that Professor William Solheim was giving a lecture at the Siam Society. So I thought I'd go because my mom would have gone. So I went to listen to Professor Solheim. And he was describing his first excavation at Non Nok Ta. And he was very excited about a mold for a little bronze axe head about this big. And I remember bronze, and he's very excited, and he's talking about the possibilities of Bronze Age in Northeast Thailand, which nobody had ever really given much credit to. And I was just sort of remembering that. However, when I looked at the shards, there were several things that I noticed, given the background that I'd been given by my mother, mostly, in the trips. So first of all, on the outside of the pots, no glaze. There was no glaze. Now that would indicate to me this is pretty old. Technology is very primitive, because as pottery develops all around the world, right, the more you develop it, you get a nice shiny glaze. But ancient pottery is whether it's from Latin America or elsewhere, there's no glaze because the technology isn't there. Secondly, low firing temperature. Right? To have glaze, apparently, you got to have a high firing temperature, which means you got to have a pretty big kiln, it's very hot, and all this kind of stuff. So low fire. Okay. The second thing is I happened to look at one of the sherds sideways. If you look sideways, you could see rice husks inside the clay, which I guessed had been put there as kind of as a bonding agent and maybe a filler. But if you could still see the rice husk, that meant low firing temperature, because the chemistry had the clay had not fused. And I remember thinking, this is the same kind of clay that we kids in America in first and second grade, you make something out of clay and you dry it in the sun, right? It had that same sort of consistency and texture and things like that. So I said, low firing temperature. That's, again, not sophisticated technology. The third point was one of the shards was a curved piece, had a charcoal burn mark on the outside. So that gave me the idea that the kiln, whatever kiln had been used to fire these pots, had to have been pretty small, and it had to have probably used wood, not charcoal, but wood. And as the wood had burned, it was turning into charcoal, the pile of wood would have fallen down and some piece would have come over and hit up against the side and left a burn mark. And I've seen lots of Benjiang pots with those burn marks. So that's 3 points. Then there was the other point. I had 3 shards with red designs on them. Each design was different. And there'd never been these kinds of designs seen in Thailand before. So I thought, this is interesting. So then I did a couple of things. One is I decided not to tell anybody. This goes to the point that Ajahn Pasit was making, because I was worried that if the word gets around among people that, wow, we got all this stuff here, and there's a whole background about what the villagers thought about these things, but if they start digging on their own, then the value to science would sort of evaporate. So I can't remember exactly how, but over the next week or so, I'd go back at various odd times and I'd dig up one little pot or I'd get one little piece and I'd take it back and I'd wash them off and put it in my suitcase. And Kun Rabiab was very unhappy, which she didn't tell me about until much later, because the villagers associated all the pots with bones. And they associated bones with bad spirits, P. So I'm bringing bad spirits into her house. This she was not too happy with.